There is a very specific kind of momentum that only drip marketing can generate in these gacha games, and right now, Wuthering Waves is threading that needle with surgical precision. Tease just enough to spark theory crafting, but not so much that the mystery dies. And lately, Kuro Games isn't just playing the game, they are defining it. Cardithea and Lupa, two characters, one mid-patch teaser cycle, and somehow the community is already saying this might outshine the anniversary update. That is not just people overreacting on launch adrenaline either. You go on Twitter, Reddit, it doesn't matter where. The tone is consistent. Players aren't just excited, they're actively rethinking their polls, combining over lore entries, speculating on combat kits, and rewatching story cutscenes just to catch details they missed for the first time. That kind of re-engagement doesn't happen unless something lands hard. And this moment matters because it signals more than just new characters. It is a structural shift in how Kuro is pacing its storytelling and patch rhythm. The drip isn't just cosmetic. Carithea's reveal folds directly into the ongoing narrative arcs with Imperator, Leviathan, and the whole Ternodian mythology. Meanwhile, Lupa's arrival feels like the front edge of a major regional expansion. Two characters dropped almost simultaneously. Both are tied to significant gameplay gaps and lore developments. That is not filler content, that is precision-timed world building. What is impressive is how curated it feels. There were no leaks, no full gameplay kits, just the official art, a name, and a weapon class. And the Wuthering Waves community is spinning entire essays off of that. When people are this locked in on characters we haven't even seen move yet, you know the marketing is doing more than just its job. It is setting expectations. And sure, some of that is aesthetic appeal. The designs go hard. But this doesn't just feel like hype for the sake of clickbait. It feels like Kuro is starting to understand how to build momentum organically, through curiosity and not just spectacle. Which brings us to Cardithea specifically. Because if there is one teaser that is crystallizing everything Kuro is trying to do with long-form storytelling, dual gameplay fantasy, and hype-driven design, it is her. So let's get into why. But before that, let's talk about the sponsor of today's video, Eldorado.gg, your go-to marketplace for safe, secure, and instant in-game trading. Whether you're looking for in-game currency, accounts, or really rare items, Eldorado makes it stupidly easy. And here's how it works. You find your game, you pick what you need, you pay securely, and then just like that, your order is on the way. Most deliveries happen within minutes. It is honestly one of the fastest services I've ever tried. Plus, every seller is verified, so there is no sketchy business. You are covered with Eldorado's Trade Shield protection, a free account warranty, 24/7 live support, and even a money-back guarantee if something goes wrong. They have got your back the whole way through. And if you're interested, click the link in the description and the pinned comment and use my code GLAIVEKEO for some sweet savings. And don't just take my word for it, right? They've got tons of positive reviews to back it all up. Thanks to Eldorado for sponsoring this video and making trading in games way less painful. And before you head out, don't forget, if you want to skip the grind and jump straight into the action, hit up my link in the description and use my code GLAIVEKEO to save a bit while you're at it. Now let's get back into the video. So let's talk about Cardithea, because while the marketing has been clean, she is the moment. Revealed as a 5-star arrow sword user, which, yes, okay, another sword, another wind type, which means another Emerald of Genesis user. But it's not the kit that had people flipping tables. It is the implication. The design is striking, but not in a usual flashy way. There is a sort of restraint to it, a duality that doesn't just look cool, it feels intentional. And for once, the lore actually supports that kind of visual storytelling. Her reveal ties directly into the 2.2 arc with Imperator and Leviathan, and that is already a loaded territory. If you have followed the story, the Cardithea and Fleur-de-Lis pairing isn't just a visual contrast, it is literal narrative duality, two halves of one fused entity. And that is not just a lore flourish, it is bleeding into gameplay speculation as well. Sentinel versus Ternodian, Light versus Darktide, a dual form setup. Think stance switching, right? Maybe even separate team roles depending on which persona you build around. And it wouldn't be the first time Kuro has played with that kind of mechanical identity split. The personalities themselves set the tone. Cardithea is like soft-spoken, shy, and charming. Fleur-de-Lis has that aura when she steps in.
Mighty God Killer.
And that kind of contrast begs for a kit with real variance between states. The community is already imagining team comps where Sentinel form Cardithea leans support or off-field utility, while Ternodian Fleur-de-Lis might be full-on main DPS, and basically two characters for the price of one. If Kuro leans to it, right, this is just a theory, a game theory, and that would actually fill a gap. Now right now, Arrow Erosion teams are one DPS short of being a complete package. We've got the support, we've got a sub DPS, but not an actual carry. If Cardithea turns out to be that missing piece, the puzzle suddenly clicks into place, especially with how much her visual kit and story positioning hint at both elements being baked into them. And let's not ignore the echo drop. When you beat Fleur-de-Lis in the weekly boss, you get Reminiscence Fleur-de-Lis, a sword, and not just any sword, the sword she uses in that fight. It is already showing up in Cardithea's splash art. The in-game description even shows that it's hers, like literally just connect the dots. It is not subtle, she is almost certainly an Arrow Erosion character. This echo is practically branded with her name. It is also worth pointing out that, it is a sharp contrast to someone like Jinshi, where Kuro used the Sentinel Echo background trick to hint at power levels before we even saw the kit. They're doing the same thing here, except it is Imperator and not Jue. But while Cardithea is layered, a bit cerebral, and kind of mythic in tone, Lupa takes a completely different approach. No divine fusion, get it? Fusion? Divine fusion? Anyways, no divine fusion, no mythologized past, just raw forward momentum. Let's shift gears. Let's talk about Lupa, a 5-star fusion Broadblade user who doesn't just enter the arena, she owns it. The teaser made that very clear. Red wolves circling, the spear usage that feels more like a final boss than a playable character. And yeah, if you haven't noticed, there is a furry tail. God bless Kuro Games. Hail Solon! I praise the almighty god for letting me born in this timeline. This is why they're my goats. Anyways, we have reached the point where people are calling her Dua Lupa with complete sincerity. It is the kind of energy that doesn't beg for attention, it dares you not to look. What is interesting is how quickly she is being compared to Jian. The Broadblade connection is obvious, sure, but temperamentally, she is his foil. Jian was cool, calm, and a wind-sculpted general. Lupa looks like she headbutts decisions. Her posture alone feels like she's seconds away from breaking the fourth wall. It is aggressive, it is raw, and yeah, it is bordering on shonen protagonist energy, minus the angst and with way more control. What really sets her apart, though, is the lore positioning. Lupa is the gladiator of Septimon, not a gladiator, the gladiator, the star gladiator. And that tells us a lot about the region she is coming from even before we see it. If Wuthering Waves has been leaning into character for storytelling, this is them using a character as an environmental foreshadowing. Septimon is probably built around structured conflict, arenas, warrior castles, the kind of place where strength isn't just respected, it is required. And if Lupa is the poster child, then we are not just getting a new character, we are getting an ideological shift. There is also the emblem tease. Granted, blink and you miss it stuff, but the Septimon sigil doesn't show Imperator. It shows something Griffin-like, and that is not just aesthetic flavor, that is a lore breadcrumb. It suggests a different pantheon, maybe a new Sentinel, definitely a separate mythos from what we have seen so far, and considering how tightly Kuro Games ties building into gameplay, that is likely going to matter. And the fact that this much speculation is coming from a teaser, just a teaser, says a lot about how effectively Kuro is controlling the drip. No hard details, no in-your-face narration, just enough motion and music to imply dominance, and maybe fill a mechanical gap players have been calling out since launch. Because while Wuthering Waves has no shortage of flashy DPS characters, what it's lacked is someone who feels heavy and fast. Jian had weight, but Lupa looks like she is built to move through that weight, like the kind of character who doesn't just get staggered, she causes it. Which brings us to the bigger question, what exactly is she filling in the roster? Is she a pure DPS, a buffer, or something else entirely? Now here's where it gets interesting. If you have been playing since the early patches, you have probably noticed a very specific kind of awkward silence in the meta. Chang'Li's fusion damage buffs, strong on paper, visually impressive, great outro effect, right? But no one to really capitalize on it. She has been that one friend who brings gourmet snacks into a potluck no one shows up to. Until now. If Lupa ends up being what she looks like, a high resonance liberation DPS with front-loaded fusion heavy output, then she doesn't just benefit from Chang'Li's kit, she completes it. This is the first time we would have a unit whose entire damage window potentially lines up with Chang'Li's fusion buff in a meaningful way. Quick swap, buff application, big red numbers, finally! And it is not just about the two of them. We're also staring down the barrel of a possible Chang'Li rerun, and what looks like a new Echo set that could lean even harder into fusion amplification. All the signs are there. Kuro is setting the table. The only thing missing is whether Lupa's actual kit delivers on the implied synergy. But assuming she does, this is the kind of shift that quietly reshapes team building. Instead of trying to force generalist buffs into characters that don't fully scale with them, we would finally have a true fusion core. Lupa as main DPS, Chang'Li as a buffer, and that third slot, maybe Brand, maybe a Spectro support, and then suddenly there's a reason to theory craft again. If Lupa is as well tuned as she seems to be, she could end up being the turning point. Not because she is flashy, but because she makes old pieces finally click. Now let's zoom out for a second, because it's not just team comps changing, it's the way Kuro is framing the entire direction of the game. Kuro has always been good at mood, the music, the visuals, the trailers. They know how to make an impression. But this feels different, more deliberate. These teasers aren't just eye candy, they are scaffolding. And you can trace the story beats, the gameplay shifts, even future patch structures just from how Cartithia and Lupa were rolled out. It is the long way from the early launch chaos, where half of the content feels like it was discovering itself in real time. And now we are seeing teasers being used like chess moves. It's quiet, calculated, and 2 steps ahead. Kuro Games is always 2 steps ahead. Each trip isn't just selling a character, it is setting the tone for what is coming. And the players are picking up on that. You scroll through any comment section and it is less when banner and more, wait, is that Griffin's sigil tied to the new Sentinel? Or does this confirm multi-form units? And that is not accidental. Kuro is giving just enough to spark theory crafting while keeping actual leaks to 0. And in a gacha space where data mines usually spoil everything 2 patches in advance, that is kinda rare and valuable. It also puts 2.4 in a different light. If the pacing holds, this could be the runway into a full 3.0 style expansion. New zone, new systems, maybe even a shift in how Sentinels function narratively. Cartithia and Lupa feel like the last 2 big pieces before that happens. Not conclusions, prologues. And if that is true, then what we are seeing right now isn't just good marketing, it is world building disguised as hype, which, let's be honest, is what drip marketing should be doing. So here's the thing, Cartithia and Lupa don't feel like your usual patch bait. They are not just here to spike banner sales or pad out roadmaps, they feel intentional. Like narrative and gameplay are finally speaking in the same language. Cartithia with her split identity and mythic framing, Lupa all teeth and spectacle, tearing into a gap that existed in the meta since launch. It is a different kind of reveal, not just flash but direction. Whether you are a lore diver or someone who skips the story, you can feel that shift. Even the way they were teased, slow, minimal, and tightly controlled. It says a lot about how Kuro is approaching this next arc. Less noise, more signal. And yeah, maybe part of that is just good timing. We are at that post-stabilization point in the game's life cycle. Early chaos mostly ironed out, players figuring out who they are in the ecosystem. But it also feels bigger than that. Like the devs are finally setting their sights beyond survival and into legacy. How does Wuthering Waves grow up? This might be the first real answer we have seen. So whether you are here for the story, the combat, or just the vibes, this patch feels like way more than a patch. It's a signal flare. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget that this video is sponsored by Eldorado.gg, link in the description, and use my code for discounts. But that is all from me, Glaive Keo, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers!